You know, among the first places that a hardworking person is going to go when they get home from work is to the refrigerator. Yeah. Nearly every day when Bridget gets home from school, the first place she goes is to the refrigerator for a snack. Mechanical refrigeration is one of the greatest, most life-changing inventions in the history of the world. And by far the most important use of refrigeration is that of preservation and maintenance. Not only for food and beverages, but also in the medical fields, for preservation of medicines and vaccines and blood plasma. Before the late 1800s, all refrigeration was supplied by ice, which was cut from lakes and ponds or rivers in the wintertime, and then stored in ice pits or insulated houses. In warm regions of the world, all ice had to be shipped in by boat and wagon, making it very expensive and not widely used. And even back in the time of the Greek and Roman empires, snow was collected from mountains and brought down by fast runners and horsemen to chill the water and the wine of the wealthy. So it's truly a privilege to be able to go to the refrigerator and pour yourself a cold glass of water or grab a chilled snack. Even today in this world, there are millions of people who do not enjoy the luxury of a refrigerator. But we didn't come together tonight to talk about the blessings of mechanical refrigeration. My point here is simple. Just as our physical or material refrigerators preserve and protect us from disease and spoilage and decay, all of us need a spiritual refrigerator, if you will, who can preserve and protect us from spiritual disease, spiritual decay, and spiritual dehydration. Over in 2 Timothy chapter 1, I want to read verses 15 through 18. You are aware of the fact that all who are in Asia turned away from me, among whom are Phygellus and Hermogenes. The Lord grant mercy to the house of Onesiphorus, for he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chains. But when he was in Rome, he eagerly searched me out and found me. The Lord grant to him to find mercy from the Lord on that day, and you know very well what services he rendered at Ephesus. In verse 16 there, Paul states that Onesiphorus often refreshed him. The Greek word used here is oneipsoku, which, probably unsurprisingly, means to cool off, revive, or refresh. What Paul is saying here is that when he was on the brink of despair, when he was languishing in prison, Onesiphorus showed up and refreshed him. He revived him, offered him comfort. Onesiphorus was Paul's spiritual refrigerator. Why did Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ, need someone to be his spiritual refrigerator? Well, Paul needed someone to refresh and comfort him because, just as we read in verse 15, he had been abandoned by so-called Christians in Asia. And over in 2 Timothy chapter 4, Paul writes to Timothy regarding his personal concerns, where he mentions that Demas had deserted him and Alexander had done him much harm. Over in 2 Corinthians 11, 24 to 28, Paul tells us of some of the trials he faced while in service to the Lord. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I have spent in the deep. I have been on frequent journeys and dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from the Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brethren. I have been in labor and hardship, through many sleepless nights, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. Apart from such external things, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Do you ever feel like the struggles of this life are too much to bear? Like there is no way that you can accomplish the challenges that lie ahead of you alone? As we've just read, Paul was clearly under a lot of pressure. He was regularly in danger of prison or death. But thankfully, Paul had a brother like Onesiphorus to comfort and rejuvenate him. So how did Onesiphorus refrigerate Paul? First, Paul said that he often refreshed me. The word often here suggests that Onesiphorus did not visit Paul on just one occasion, but that he did it frequently and regularly, as often as he had the opportunity. And secondly, Paul stated that he was not ashamed of his chains. Now, throughout the letters to Timothy, Paul frequently references how we as Christians should not be ashamed of the Lord. Even when the world around us tries to belittle the teachings of the gospel and celebrate sin, Paul upheld Onesiphorus as an example of a man who was not ashamed of the apostles' plight in prison because he knew that he was there for the cause of spreading the gospel. So when you're overwhelmed or overworked, when you're overly exhausted, to who do you turn? Is it to your spouse or to a parent? Is it to your elders? Maybe a close friend or a neighbor? Whoever it is, we all need a faithful friend who will pick us up when we are down. In Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 and 10, we read that two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. It is such a blessing to have a spiritual refrigerator that we can turn to when we are struggling and spiritually exhausted. But it is even better to be a spiritual refrigerator. When we see a neighbor or a brother and sister in Christ who is weak, weary, and worn, we should show up and speak the right words in the right way. In Proverbs 16:24, we read, "Pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." When someone is standing at a fork in the road and we offer good and godly counsel, we are spiritual refrigerators. When a person is downtrodden in the ditch of despair and we intervene to offer good and comforting news, we are spiritual refrigerators. Solomon writes in Proverbs 25 and 25 that like cold water to a weary soul, so is good news from a distant land. When we give of our time, our talents, and our treasures to serve those who are struggling and physically and spiritually, we, like Onesiphorus, are spiritual refrigerators. Over in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 to 18, we read, "Therefore do not lose heart. But though our outer man is decaying, yet our inner man is being renewed day by day. For momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond comparison. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen, eternal." So, tonight I want to encourage you to be like Onesiphorus. Reach out to your brothers and sisters, your friends, your neighbors. Provide them with godly advice and encouragement. Give of yourself to help those around you who are struggling. If there are any here tonight that are struggling, I'd encourage you to let your brothers and sisters know. Let us serve and comfort you in any way that we can. Or if there are any here tonight that have not yet accepted the Lord's invitation, why not tonight? The pain and suffering of this world is temporary, but the glory of our promised home in heaven is beyond comparison.